Welcome to Shadowed Tales Archive, a place where forgotten stories breathe again, where whispers crawl from the cracks of reality, and fear finds a voice. Turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and listen closely, because some tales were never meant to be told. Tonight's story is titled The Hollow Hours. Let the shadows speak.
Part 1. The last track. I've never liked running. Not just because it's exhausting, but because it gives you too much time to think. Too much time to remember things that should stay buried. People always said running cleared their heads, but for me it only made the ghosts louder. Back in high school, I joined the cross-country team for all the wrong reasons. To kill time, to lose weight, to hang out with a girl named Maddie who used to draw tiny blackbirds on the corners of her notebook. We were juniors then, young enough to feel immortal, dumb enough to believe it. And then she died. It happened on a cold Sunday in February. A two-lane road, a distracted driver. She was riding in the back seat with her sketchbook open on her lap, apparently mid-doodle when it happened. Everyone else survived. Maddie didn't. No bloodbath, no fiery explosion, just a quiet, clean erasure from the world. I didn't run after that. Not once. Not until last week. It started with a message. A folded note slid under my door at the halfway house I've been staying in. No name. No handwriting I recognized. Just 6 words scratched in pencil. Run before the hollow finds you. I thought it was some kind of prank, until the dreams came. Every night, the same rain-soaked forest, the same crooked path, the same flash of something red, sometimes a bird, sometimes Maddie in a red dress, just ahead, always turning a corner before I could catch up. Sometimes I'd wake up with mud on my arms. Last Friday I broke. I hadn't slept in 3 days. Couldn't tell the difference between what was real and what was left over from the dreams. I found myself outside before dawn, dressed in an old track hoodie and sneakers I hadn't worn in years. The rain was already falling, soft and cold and endless. There's a trail system behind the psychiatric clinic near the edge of town. Old growth forest, dense and overgrown. Not on any official maps. Rumor is a few kids got lost back there years ago and never turned up. Naturally, it became the place we all dared each other to sneak into in high school. That morning, I walked to the trailhead like it was the only thing left to do. It smelled like rotting pine needles and electricity. The deeper I went, the more I realized I hadn't chosen to be there. Something had pulled me in. The rain didn't ease up, it just seemed to fall in a steady, impossible rhythm, like a ticking clock buried beneath the clouds. I ran. At first it felt good. My body remembered the motion even after all these years. My shoes slapped against wet earth. The wind cut at my face. My breath came hard but steady. And then I saw it. A splash of crimson against the trees. It darted to the left, then vanished between the trunks. It wasn't a person, not exactly. Not a bird either, just a shape, a memory in motion. I followed it. The trail split without warning. Left, uphill into thorns. Right, downhill into fog. I chose right. Not sure why. Maybe because fog hides things. Or maybe because Maddie always said, when you can't decide, take the harder path. That's probably where the story is. The mud was deeper here. The trees grew closer, like ribs folding inward. Every so often, I'd hear something, branches cracking, whispers between raindrops, but I told myself it was just the wind. Then the smell changed. It turned sour, metallic, like wet copper and old meat. I slowed down, looked around. That's when I noticed the birds had stopped. No chirping, no rustling, just nothing. The hollow had found me. A growl echoed through the trees, not a dog's, not any animal I knew. It was like the earth itself was clearing its throat. and I ran harder, twisting turns, blind corners. My breath was slicing out of me like broken glass. I felt something behind me chasing, but not moving, like it was part of the air, part of my thoughts. I stumbled into a clearing. It was too perfect. A wide open circle of land, maybe 30 feet across. One lone stump stood in the center, smooth as marble, dripping with rain. And sitting on it, glowing red against the storm, was a scarlet bird, a tanager, just like in the dreams. It stared at me with eyes that weren't bird eyes. They were green, familiar. What? Maddie's eyes. My knees buckled. I tried to look away but couldn't. The air thickened like syrup. The forest was silent except for the sound of my pulse, hammering against my skull. Maddie? I whispered. The bird tilted its head, and then it spoke, not in sound but in memory. I felt her voice in my ribs, echoing through every broken part of me. You waited too long. The hollow remembers. Then it flew straight into the sky, vanishing into the gray. That's when I noticed the figure standing at the tree line. A woman in white, hair soaked to her chest, pale feet on the wet grass. She looked just like Maddie but taller. Wrong. Her arms were too long, her face too symmetrical. A mimic wearing her like a suit. She raised one hand and pointed behind me. I turned and saw nothing. Then I turned back. She was gone. Part 2. The Reflection Tree. My legs moved before my mind could catch up. I sprinted away from the clearing, deeper into the trees, even though every part of me screamed to turn back. But turning back meant looking, and looking meant acknowledging what I saw. And I wasn't ready for that. The trail vanished. I realized too late I wasn't on any path anymore. The forest thickened with every step. Branches clawed at my face and arms like fingers trying to pull me back. The rain hadn't stopped. It just became finer, like mist laced with needles. My breath came in gasps now. Each inhale burned. Every footfall landed with the weight of doubt. I don't know how long I ran. Time was already slippery in that place. Eventually, I collapsed beside a tree, an enormous thing with bark so dark it looked charred. The roots rose above the ground like twisted veins, and I curled between them like a dying animal. I stared up through the canopy, trying to find the moon or maybe the sun or any sign of what time it was. But the sky was just gray, like ash swirling behind frosted glass. That's when I noticed something strange about the tree. Its bark shifted, not in motion but in reflection. When I leaned in, I saw myself, like a mirror but cracked. My face stared back, covered in dirt and blood, eyes wide and empty. But behind my reflection was something else. A girl. She stood at my shoulder, her face nearly touching mine. But when I turned around, there was no one. I pressed my fingers against the bark. It was cold, slick like skin. The reflection changed again. This time it wasn't me at all. It was Maddie sitting cross-legged under a tree just like this one, drawing. Her eyes looked up into the sky, wide with wonder. And then, something emerged behind her. A shadow with antlers made of dripping ink, silent and towering. It placed one hand on her shoulder. She didn't react. She didn't even blink. I yanked my hand away from the bark like it burned me. Not real, I whispered. It's not real. But the forest was already answering. All around me, the wind began to whisper my name. Micah. Not loud, not aggressive, just gentle, repetitive, as if coaxing me to sleep. I stood. That was my name, Micah. I had almost forgotten. Something about this place, it fed on that, on forgetting, on letting go. And suddenly I remembered what they told me back at the facility. The trauma you suppress doesn't disappear, Micah. It just changes shape in the dark. I staggered away from the reflection tree, heading in any direction that felt like not here. But the forest didn't like that. Soon the terrain changed again. The trees grew thinner, taller. The ground sloped upward, and the drizzle hardened into icy rain. It pinged against the leaves like tiny bones dropping from the sky. And then I heard it. Laughter. Children's laughter, echoing faintly through the trees. I froze. No animals, no people, but laughter. It got louder the closer I walked. A high-pitched chorus that swung between playful and mocking. It reminded me of Maddie's little brother back when he used to hide under the porch and scare the mailman. Except this laughter didn't belong to anything innocent. I stepped into a new clearing. This one was a playground. I swear to God. Rusty swings. A crooked slide. Monkey bars half swallowed by ivy. Everything was coated in grime and rot, but still intact, like it had been waiting. And sitting on the merry-go-round, spinning slowly on its own, were 3 faceless children. They wore soap school uniforms. Each had a bird perched on their shoulder. One red, one blue, one black. The birds stared at me. The children did not. I backed away slowly. The red bird opened its beak, and in Maddie's voice it said, "He's not ready yet." I ran again. Not because I was scared, though I was, but because I felt something rising inside me. Not a memory, but a sensation like a rope tightening around my spine. The hollow was watching, and maybe it had been all along. I burst into another part of the woods, this one strangely geometric. The trees here grew in perfect lines, evenly spaced, trunks white and smooth like bleached bones. And in the center of this grove stood a house. It looked like a farmhouse, but melted. Its roof drooped at odd angles, its windows were crooked ovals, and the door leaned inward like it was sighing. I approached, heart thudding, and knocked. No answer. I tried the handle. It turned with a groan and opened into a dim, flickering hallway lined with mirrors. Each mirror showed me a different version of myself. One was 8, staring at my dad's coffin. One was 15, slamming a door after screaming at Maddie. One was 17, curled up on the bathroom floor with a razor in hand. And one mirror was empty. I stepped toward that one. As I got closer, something appeared, slowly, like mist curling into form. Not me, not Maddie, but something with my face, wearing her smile. It opened its mouth and spoke in her voice. "Stay here, Micah. The hollow's almost done." I turned and bolted back outside. The forest didn't stop me this time. In fact, the trees opened like curtains, parting to reveal something new. A wide dirt path lit by soft orange light, leading toward what looked like a train station. No tracks, no people. Just a wooden bench, a lantern, and a sign swinging in the rain that read, "Departures only." And sitting on the bench, head bowed, was Maddie. But not her. Not exactly. She looked older. Her skin was too pale. Her eyes were gray now, not green. I approached slowly. "Maddie?" I asked. She didn't answer. I sat beside her. I don't know what's happening to me. Still no response. Then she looked up and said, "You're still running. That's why the hollow can't take you." Part 3. Departures only. I stared at her, waiting for something, an explanation, a warning, maybe even comfort. But Maddie just sat there on the rain-slicked bench, her hands folded neatly in her lap, her gaze lost in the mist. "I don't understand," I whispered. She blinked slowly, then finally turned to me. Her expression was blank, calm, almost peaceful, but it was like watching someone remember a dream they never wanted to wake from. "The hollow eats memory," she said, "in time, but not all at once. It unravels you, thought by thought. Love first, then names, then the shape of your face." I swallowed hard. I still remember you. She smiled, tired and crooked. Do you? I opened my mouth to argue, but the words died in my throat. What was her last name? What was the name of the park where we had our first kiss? I couldn't remember. It was like grabbing at wet leaves in the dark. I could feel the shapes, but not the meaning. I clenched my fist. Why are you here? Why do you look like this? She glanced at the sign above the bench. Departures only. You're close, she said. But the hollow doesn't let go unless you choose. Choose what? To forget. A low, rhythmic sound rumbled in the distance. At first I thought it was thunder, but then I saw it, headlights cutting through the fog. A train. But there were no tracks. Just dirt and roots and moss, but the train glided forward like it didn't care. It pulled into the clearing, silent and still. Doors hissed open with a soft exhale. Inside there was only shadow. Maddie stood. This is your stop, she said. If you want to sleep. I stood too, knees trembling. What happens if I get on? You stop running. What happens if I don't? She didn't answer. The silence grew loud again. That hum of emptiness I had learned to recognize in this forest. The one that meant it was near. The hollow. Not a creature. Not a place. Not even a spirit. Something older than all of those. Something that wore people's faces like masks. I took a step back. No, I said. This isn't real. The train let out a slow, hollow whistle. Steam rolled across the clearing, curling around my legs like vines. Maddie didn't follow me. She just said, "You'll forget me either way." I turned and ran. The fog thickened again, but this time it clung to me, like oil. My limbs grew heavy. My vision blurred. I stumbled, hit a tree, then another. The forest didn't look the same. Everything was gray, desaturated, as if someone had drained the color from the world. And then I realized I couldn't hear the rain anymore, or the wind, or even my own footsteps. I was walking, but there was no sound. That's when I saw the others. Figures began to emerge between the trees. Dozens of them. Some had faces, some didn't. Some wore old track uniforms. Some were barefoot in hospital gowns. All of them were pale and silent and walking in slow circles. One of them looked like my mother. Another looked like me. But none of them reacted as I passed. They just stared forward, vacant. And somewhere beyond them I heard it again, the laughter. Childlike, sure, coming from every direction. I picked up speed, tried to weave through the figures, tried to find the edges, but there were no edges, just trees, faces, fog, footsteps that made no sound. I tripped again and fell into mud, or what I thought was mud, until I saw it was feathers. Red feathers, thousands of them, all torn and soaked and twitching. I clawed myself upright and turned, and standing right behind me was the mimic, the one from the stump, the wrong Maddie. Her smile was wider now, teeth too perfect, eyes glowing dimly like dying fireflies. "You're almost out of time," she said, "but the hollow is patient." She held something out to me, a Polaroid photo. I took it before I could stop myself. It was a picture of me running through the very clearing we just stood in, mouth open in a scream. And in the background was something huge and black and shifting, with a dozen limbs that bent the wrong way and a head made of smoke. I dropped the photo. "This isn't happening," I said. She tilted her head. "Why do you think it keeps letting you go?" "What?" "You taste like grief." "Likes that." "Likes watching what grief does to a soul. You're its favorite meal." The mimic reached out, but didn't touch me. Instead, she pointed upward. I looked. Through a gap in the canopy, the clouds had finally parted, and the moon was red, deep, bleeding red. Not natural, not symbolic. Wrong. The moment I saw it, my ears rang. My head split. I dropped to my knees, screaming, but no sound came out. And in the silence, the hollow spoke, not in words, in memories. I saw every time I looked at Maddie and thought I could have stopped her from getting in that car. I saw every time I didn't answer her calls when she needed me. I saw every second I let guilt turn me into something hollow. Then I woke up, sort of. I was back at the edge of the forest, just outside the trailhead, but it was daytime, bright and clear. I blinked against the sunlight and stumbled out toward the street. A car passed. A jogger waved at me, and I waved back, dazed. For a second, I thought I had made it, that I'd beaten it, but then I heard a bird chirp. I turned. Sitting on the sidewalk fence was a scarlet tanager. It looked at me with Maddie's eyes. Then it flew into the trees, and behind me, just faintly, the train whistle blew again. Part 4. The Ones Who Came Back. I didn't talk about it. Not the bird, not the train, not the red moon. I just went home, took a long shower, and stared at myself in the mirror for hours, trying to convince myself I was still real. But deep down, I knew the truth. Something followed me back. The first sign was small. The calendar on my phone said it was Tuesday, but I remembered going into the forest on a Friday. I told myself it was exhaustion, some trauma-fueled fugue state. My brain filling in the gaps like shattered glass trying to reassemble into a window. But then the second sign came. I went to visit my old therapist, Dr. Reese. Just walked into the clinic and asked if he still had my file. The receptionist frowned. "You've never been here before." She turned her screen toward me. No record, no notes, no Micah Layton ever seen. I walked out and vomited in the bushes, not because I was scared, because I was starting to believe I might not exist here. I went to the library next, pulled up an old article I remembered about the car crash. Maddie's crash was there, sort of. Same date, same town, same highway. But the article said only one person died, a man. There was no mention of Maddie, no survivors. I checked my backpack for the only thing I had left, something real, something I could hold. The Polaroid, the one with the mimic in the forest. But when I pulled it out, the photo had changed. Now it showed me standing in front of the crooked train station sign, looking directly at the camera. Behind me there was no forest, only empty sky. The world was wrong now, like a copy of a copy. People talked to me differently. My mother, at least I think it was her, called me Marcus once, then apologized like it was nothing. My apartment had the same furniture, same layout, but the walls were painted a different shade of blue. And at night, the tanager came back. It would perch on the fire escape and tap the glass with its beak. Not angry, not frantic, just waiting. I needed answers, so I found someone who might have them. There's an online forum, buried deep in some corner of the web, dedicated to temporal dislocation and experiential rifts. Conspiracy stuff, mostly nonsense, but one thread stood out. Title: I went running in the hollow woods. I came back, different. Posted 3 years ago. I messaged the user. They replied within minutes. Said their name was Aaron. Said they lived just a few hours away. Said he still wasn't sure he ever really left. We met in a park on the edge of the city. He looked rough. Not in the homeless sense, but in this something peeled a few layers off my soul kind of way. His eyes never settled on one spot for long. He flinched when I walked up. "You're from the Hollow?" he said like it was a diagnosis. I nodded. "How long were you in?" I shrugged. 2 days maybe? He let out a bitter laugh. "Time doesn't work there. I was gone for 3 hours. Came back to find out I'd been reported missing for 6 months." I swallowed. What is it? The hollow? Aaron sat on the bench like his spine barely held him together. It's not a place, he said. Not really. It's a gap, a seam in reality. Some say it's where time bleeds into itself. Others say it's where forgotten gods dream. He looked at me, eyes suddenly sharp. But I think it's where you go when grief gets too heavy for the world to hold. He pulled something from his coat. A photo. It was a girl, dark hair, freckles, laughing. She was my sister, he said. We were hiking when she slipped off a ridge. I tried to grab her. I didn't. I said nothing. He continued. A year later, I followed a trail into a forest that shouldn't have existed. She was there, just like I remembered, but she wasn't right. My throat tightened. He leaned in, voice low. The hollow doesn't bring them back. It brings your version of them back. The version you remember. The version it can twist. My thoughts flashed to the mimic, to the wrong smile, to Maddie's green eyes inside that bird's skull. I whispered, so it was never her. No, Aaron said, but it knows what you want. It wears it like bait. We sat in silence for a while. Then he said the one thing that stuck with me. If you're seeing the bird again, it means you left the door open. I stared at him. What do I do? He handed me a small notebook, leather-bound, pages torn and smeared. Write it down. Everything you remember. Every detail. Lock it in ink. Because the more you forget, the closer it gets. I took the notebook home. That night I started writing. Names, places, smells, sounds. The way Maddie laughed through her nose when she was faking it. The exact shape of the tree stump in the clearing. The red moon. The mimic's teeth. I wrote until my hand cramped and my eyes blurred. Then I looked at the window. The tanager was back. Except this time, it wasn't alone. Perched beside it was another bird. Black feathers, silver eyes. Smaller, shivering. Then a third bird landed. Whoa. I stared at the three of them as they stared back at me. Suddenly, I remembered the playground. The children on the merry-go-round. Each with a bird. Red, black, blue. I looked down at my notebook. The last page had been torn out. Part 5. The memory that wasn't. The page was gone. The last one in the notebook, the one I was sure I'd just finished writing on, ripped clean out. No tear marks, no scraps, just absence. And for the first time since I'd come back, I felt truly afraid. Not scared of the hollow, not even scared of the mimic, but scared of forgetting what was mine. The birds still watched me. 3 of them. Red, black, blue. They sat perfectly still on the fire escape, their tiny heads cocked in unison, their eyes gleaming in the dark like stars underwater. I backed away from the window and shut the blinds. But the sound of beaks tapping against glass didn't stop. It never did. The next morning I visited my mom. I needed to see her. I needed something to feel solid again. She opened the door with a puzzled smile, like someone opening the door for a neighbor they barely remembered. "Can I help you?" she asked. I froze. "It's me, Micah." Her smile faltered. "Micah?" she repeated slowly. Oh my God, you look just like..." She stopped herself. Then her face went pale. "I'm sorry. I think you should go." I didn't leave. I sat on her porch for hours, trying to remember. The name of my old dog. The first time I broke a bone. My 8th birthday party. Nothing came. Not just blanks, fabricated replacements. I'd see flashes of someone else's life flickering in mine. Wrong furniture, wrong colors, a sense that even the air smelled different. By dusk, I walked home with the sinking feeling that whatever came back from the hollow might not be me. That night, the birds weren't outside the window anymore. They were inside, perched on the headboard, watching. I sat on the edge of the bed, heart thudding, staring at them in silence. The red one hopped forward first. It opened its beak and Maddie's voice spilled out again, this time faint, frayed like a cassette tape on its last stretch of ribbon. "Micah, I miss you. Why won't you come back?" I said nothing. The blue bird followed, voice higher, more childlike. "Do you remember the playground? The tree stump? The mirror tree?" Still I said nothing. Then the black bird opened its beak, and it screamed. Not a bird scream, not a human scream. Something inhuman, like metal scraping bone, like grief-given sound. It hit me so hard I felt my eardrums pop. I fell to the floor, clutching my head. When I looked up again, the birds were gone, but the window was open. The next few days blurred. I stopped going out, stopped answering calls. Not that there were many. My name was gone from most systems. Driver's license invalid, credit card flagged as stolen. Even my social media accounts had been wiped. Micah Layton had been edited, and in his place was something that looked like him, sounded like him, but every day remembered less. I tried to write again, but the notebook pages turned black beneath my pen. Not ink, just void, like the paper was swallowing the words before they could be born. I started having visions during the day, awake dreams. I'd see people walking backward, trees bending toward the ground like they were bowing, red moons in the reflection of coffee cups, and always the tanager perched somewhere impossible, on a moving ceiling fan, inside a sealed fridge, in my bathroom mirror. One night I heard a knock on the door, not loud, not urgent, just patient. I opened it, and Maddie was there, but not the mimic, not the twisted smile version. This was her, hair wet, hands trembling, eyes glassy with fear. "Micah," she whispered, "I think you brought it back." I froze. "Brought what back?" I asked. She stepped inside. Her skin was cold like rain on glass. "The hollow's not a place," she said. "It's a seed. Once it touches you, it grows. It doesn't let go. It replicates." She looked around my apartment like it was a stranger's home. "This isn't your world anymore." I escaped. "No," she said gently. "You just infected the one you came back to." She walked over to the table, picked up the notebook and flipped it open. Blank pages. Then slowly black writing began to form on them, but not from the pen, from within the page itself, like ink rising through water. I watched as a single sentence etched itself across the center of the spread. "You are the hollow now." I backed away. Maddie didn't follow. She simply faded, like a fog pulled backward through the seams of reality, like a memory exhaled. When she vanished, the room felt too big, and I felt too thin. The next morning, the birds were gone, but there was a knock at the door, a soft one. When I opened it, a boy stood there, young, wide-eyed, mud on his shoes, pants torn. "Is this the way out?" he asked, voice shaking. I didn't know what to say. Behind him, the hallway stretched endlessly, and at the very end, just barely visible, a red moon hovered. Part 6. The Seam Walker. The boy just stood there trembling. He couldn't have been more than 12. Dirt streaked across his cheeks. His left eye was swollen, and there were leaves tangled in his hoodie strings. "What do you mean?" I asked. He pointed past me into the apartment. "The door," he said. "It opened for me. The red moon's still out. I didn't know where else to go." I felt it then, a hum beneath my feet, like the floorboards were breathing, like something beneath the building had just noticed him. And me. I let him in. I don't know why. Maybe because I saw myself in his shaking hands. Maybe because I already knew this was inevitable. or maybe because I wanted to know what came next. He walked in slowly, looking around like he expected things to start crawling out of the walls. I gave him water, sat him down, and asked his name. "Ezra," he said. "I was camping with my uncle. I wandered into the woods after I saw something glowing red. I think I've been walking for days." "How long ago was that?" I asked. He looked confused. "Last night." I nodded. Ezra pulled something from his pocket. A drawing. Crayon on notebook paper. Messy, frantic. A tree with eyes. A mouth full of hands. 3 birds perched on its limbs, red, black, blue. I recognized it, but I said nothing. He placed it on the table, careful like it might shatter. "It talks when I sleep," he whispered. "The birds, they tell me things. About the ones who stay too long. About the ones who leave broken." I could feel it again. The shift in the air. The hollow didn't scream. It sighed, slowly, patiently, like it knew everything was going according to plan. Like it had planted this moment years ago. I asked Ezra if he remembered the way out. He shook his head. "I was running," he said. "Then I tripped. When I stood up, the trees were different. I couldn't hear the wind anymore. Just whispers and shadows. There were faces in the bark." His voice dropped to a whisper. "And then I saw you. I felt something snap in my head. Not pain, just detachment. Like someone had reached in and tugged loose a string that held reality together." "I think you're supposed to help me," Ezra said. "They told me you could." "Who's they?" He just looked at me. Didn't blink. Didn't answer. And for the first time, I realized something that should have been obvious. He wasn't wet. He'd come from a forest of rain and red moons. But there wasn't a drop of moisture on him. Not on his shoes. Not in his hair. He hadn't come through the door. He had come through me. I stood. The apartment walls felt too close now, like they were breathing with me. The shadows pulsed. The photos on the wall had changed, no longer mine. Images of forests, of train tracks that ended in teeth, of children with bird masks. Ezra didn't seem to notice. He just kept watching me, calm and still. "I think you've been here longer than you think," he said. I moved to the window and pulled open the blinds. No city, just fog, thick and endless, like a white ocean stretching in every direction. My building was a lone tower in a world that had stopped pretending to be real. There was something moving in the mist, something tall, multiple limbs, shifting, watching. I could feel its attention, like a hook sliding beneath my skin. The hollow hadn't infected this world. I had brought this one back with me into the hollow. Ezra stood behind me now, voice almost gentle. "They said if you stay too long, you stop remembering how to leave." "I remember," I said quickly. "Do you?" He held up a photo. I didn't recognize it. It was me, but older, hollow-eyed, standing in front of the train station again. The sign behind me had changed. Seamwalker Terminus. The train was pulling in, right there behind me, except there were no tracks, except I was still in the apartment, except I could hear the whistle inside my ears. I dropped to the floor, clutching my head. It was all unraveling now. Past, present, memory, identity. Everything was unspooling like a frayed film reel melting under the projector's heat. Ezra's voice floated through it all. "They said when it finds a vessel strong enough, it plants the forest inside them." I looked up. "What do you mean?" He pointed at my chest. "You're not running anymore. You're growing." I looked down at my skin. Roots. Thin, hairline roots spidering down my arms, my neck. Beneath the surface, I scratched, peeled, but they only dug deeper. I ran to the bathroom mirror, and my reflection was wrong. Eyes too wide, mouth too still. something breathing beneath the pupils, like smoke curling behind glass. On the mirror, written in condensation, were 5 words. "She's waiting at the stump." I turned back to Ezra. He was gone. In his place, just a trail of leaves, leading to my front door, which now stood open. Beyond it, the hallway was no longer carpeted, no longer concrete, just forest, twisting trees, infinite rain, and that red, whispering light leaking through the branches like blood through gauze. I stepped toward it, and the birds began to sing. Part 7. The Roots Remember. The leaves whispered as I crossed the threshold. There was no door behind me now, just more trees. The forest closed in like it had been waiting, patient and silent. The rain began again, soft at first, then heavier, until each drop sounded like a clock ticking against bone. I walked barefoot. Somewhere behind me, my shoes had disappeared. Didn't matter. The ground wasn't dirt anymore. It was soft, spongy, almost warm, like walking on old memories or skin. It didn't take long before I realized this wasn't the same forest I entered weeks ago. No, this version was older, hungrier. The trees leaned in at impossible angles, their branches gnarled like arthritic hands. Faces drifted in the bark, some I recognized, others I didn't. Maddie's mouth, my mother's eyes. Ezra's voice echoed somewhere far off, repeating the words, "She's waiting at the stump." I reached the clearing, the same one from before, but it had changed. The stump was larger now, taller than me, wide as a car. Its surface was wet, polished like obsidian, and etched with strange symbols that pulsed with faint red light. And perched atop it was the scarlet tanager, still silent, watching. I approached slowly. Every step dragged, like the air had turned to syrup. My chest ached. My hands shook. The bird didn't move, but something else did. A shape rising from the back of the stump. Not fast, not violent, just deliberate. She stepped forward. Not the mimic, not the false version. Maddie, the real one. Or maybe the best version my dying mind could conjure. Her hair was damp from the rain. Her sweater had the little rip near the collar she used to hide with her hand. Her lips parted, but no sound came. I wanted to run. I wanted to fall into her arms. I wanted to scream. I did none of those things. Instead, I asked, "Am I dead?" She shook her head. "Worse," she said. Her voice echoed like wind through dead leaves. "You've forgotten too much." "I'm trying to remember," I said. "But the hollow doesn't want you to," she replied. "It wants you empty. Hollow things carry it further." She pointed at the stump. The surface changed. No longer black, now reflective. And in it I saw myself, not as I was now, but as I was before. 17. Thin, alive, holding a bouquet in one hand and Maddie's sketchbook in the other, standing at her grave. The image shifted again. Now I was running through the forest, barefoot, bleeding. Another shift. Now I was on the train, surrounded by faceless passengers with bird beaks. One of them handed me a mirror. In it, I was no one. "I don't want to forget you," I said. "You already have," Maddie said softly. The bird chirped once. I looked down. Now there were 3 birds. They circled the stump, red, black, blue. They stared at me like judges at the end of time. The trees whispered. Not words, memories. I heard myself screaming when I first got lost. Heard my mother's voice on the phone calling my name through static. Heard Ezra crying in the dark. I dropped to my knees, and the forest answered. Roots burst from the ground, coiling around my arms and legs like serpents. Not tight enough to hurt, just enough to remind me, "You're not going anywhere." Maddie stepped closer. "You have to choose, Micah." "Choose what?" To remember and leave this behind, or forget and stay with me. Is this even real? None of it is, and all of it is. The roots tightened. The birds flapped once, then stilled. I looked into Maddie's eyes and saw all the versions of her that had lived inside me. The laughing girl with ink on her fingers, the angry voice on the phone, the silent one at the hospital, the mimic, and behind them all, a shadow, the hollow. It had worn her like a coat, and now it was trying to wear me. I made my choice. I stepped toward the stump. The surface shimmered. I raised my hand, pressed my fingers into the reflection. The moment I touched it, the forest exploded with sound, thousands of whispers, screams, sobs, laughter, all bleeding together. The birds took flight, circling above like a vortex. Maddie reached out, but I was already falling. Not physically. Internally, I fell backward through every version of myself. Every lie I'd told to survive. Every memory I'd let the hollow reshape. I saw the boy I was, the man I became, and the monster I was on the verge of becoming. And then, silence. I woke up gasping. In the hospital. Monitors beeping. White sheets. Blinding light. A nurse shouting for a doctor. My mother crying beside me. She grabbed my hand. "Oh my God, Micah. You're back." Part 8. All that we forget. The light was too clean. White, buzzing fluorescence. The kind that makes shadows too sharp and rooms feel smaller than they are. I blinked against it, eyes aching, throat dry like paper. "Micah," my mother whispered again, gripping my hand like she thought I might vanish if she let go. "You're awake," she said, choking back tears. I tried to speak. My lips barely moved. No sound came out. A doctor appeared. Nurses followed. Tests, lights, questions. I was in a hospital. I was back. They said I'd been found 2 nights ago, collapsed at the edge of the state park. Hypothermic, dehydrated, delirious. They said I was lucky. They said it was a miracle I survived 2 weeks lost in the woods. 2 weeks. I said nothing, because I didn't remember 2 weeks. I remembered lifetimes. For a while, I let them believe I was healing. I smiled. I nodded. I answered questions the way I thought they wanted me to. I kept quiet about the birds, the train, the tree that watched. But every now and then, when the lights flickered in the hallway or the rain tapped just the right rhythm on the windows, I would see it again. The reflection tree, in the glass of my water, in the surface of the monitor, in my eyes. They let me go home after 10 days. Said I needed stable familiarity. Said it would help ground my reality. But nothing felt familiar. The rooms were the same but colder. The furniture sat in the right places, but it was too still, too staged, like set pieces waiting for actors to forget their lines. And worse, I kept forgetting things. Small things at first. My phone pin. The name of the nurse I'd spoken to 3 times. But then, I found Maddie's sketchbook on my nightstand. I froze. I knew I didn't own it anymore. It had been lost in the crash. I picked it up. The pages were filled. Sketches of me over and over, each one slightly different. In some, my mouth was missing. In others, I had no eyes. One showed me curled up at the base of the reflection tree, roots growing from my spine. At the bottom of that page, written in blocky black letters, "The hollow is patient. The hollow waits." The birds came back that night. Just one at first. The red tanager. It perched on my dresser watching me sleep. Then the others returned. Black, blue, and now a 4th, white. I tried burning the sketchbook, but the flames wouldn't catch. I tore the pages out and threw them away. They were back on my desk the next morning. I stopped sleeping. Every time I closed my eyes, I was back there, back in the woods at the stump, hearing whispers I couldn't understand and voices I wished I could forget. One morning, I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the man staring back. Not just older, not just tired, different. His eyes blinked slower than mine. His mouth twitched when mine didn't. Behind him, the forest swayed. I ran, left the apartment, took nothing, just moved, changed my name, disappeared. But no matter where I go, the hollow finds me. In static between radio stations, in tree bark patterns on the side of the road, in the silence right before dawn, and in the eyes of children who watch too closely. Last week, I found another note slipped under my motel door. Same handwriting as the first, same pencil marks. Read, "We're still waiting at the stump. I think I understand now. The hollow doesn't need to keep you. It just needs to be remembered. It just needs you to carry it forward." And in the quiet moments, when grief comes back like tide water and memory slips like sand, it opens. Just a crack. Just enough for someone new to wander in. So if you're hearing this, if you feel drawn to the woods during the rain, if you see the birds watching, run. Not away, forward. Because once the hollow knows your name, it never forgets. Even if you do.
And that was tonight's tale from the Shadowed Tales archive. If it left a mark on your mind, if the silence feels heavier now, then the story did what it was meant to do. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the darkness. New stories are always on their way. Until then, keep the lights low and the doors locked.